four different kinds of beans here that are soaking. Black beans, red beans, butter beans, and anasazi beans, which are these beautiful beans. And these are like playing in what is it, the almond covered, chocolate covered almonds. That's what these are like playing in. They're so beautiful. These are the anasazi beans. Anasazi came from the Mesa Verde, where the Indians lived in the rocks, down in southern Colorado next to New Mexico. In fact, I think it's Dove Creek, Dove something down there. We went there, and that's where we bought all the beans. It's the bean capital of the nation, I believe. So we bought anasazi beans, black beans. We have little red beans with a white stripe through them. And I have these incredible butter beans. So we've been soaking them. We soak them because of our digestive system. And I add a little bit of olive oil. I just know that when I soak them beforehand and with the oil, then I'm talking like a tablespoon, it makes it so they are not as gassy as beans. If I open a can of beans from a store, the beans are so gassy. But these beans, especially the anasazi, are not as gassy anyway, and so we love them. I'm going to be cooking 2 of them in crock pots and 2 of them on the stove so that you can see how they all work together, or how they all work in different ways. If you have an Instapot, I know that they can be cooked that way too. I don't own one, and so you can cook those and tell me how they work for you. I have rinsed these again and put them in the crock pot, and now I'm going to rinse the butter beans and do the same in another crock pot. I'm going to rinse my black beans now. And my red beans. Now we can season these beans however we want to. And as we season them and they cook, then they will take on that flavor. So this is what I'm doing. In with my white beans, I am putting a ham hock and the seasonings that would go along with that. My anasazi beans, and I'm putting onion and garlic in all of them. So let's get started with that. To each one of these, I'm adding onions. And garlic. You can see it's not an exact science here. And then I've got the herbs that Jim got me for Christmas, and they are all different types of herbs, and so I just sprinkle them in. And I use pink Himalayan salt and sea salt. Sometimes I need the iodized for my thyroid, and so I choose to use the sea salt that's iodized. All right, now I took my big block of broth and I put it in the pan and it's melted. So I'm going to put a little bit in each one of these so they can have the flavor from the broth. Because I am telling you, it makes a huge difference. Now I'm going to add the rest of with water. Crock pot's getting plugged in. The others are going onto the stove. I'll bring them to a boil, put them down to a simmer, let them cook for 2 or 3 hours. This one is going to have pork chop put in it. I thought I had a ham hock. I'm sure I do somewhere at the bottom of my freezer. But my ham has real thick fat on it, and I want the flavor in with my white beans. Well, the beans are cooked. It's the next day, actually it's the next weekend, after the weekend. So what I did, these two in the front here were cooked on the stove. And you know, I left them on the stove probably for at least 3 hours. I err on the side of being really done because I don't like chunky beans. And these are, I've tasted all of them. They all have a little bit of the broth taste. They're seasoned with onions and garlic. These are the anasazi. We had some for lunch yesterday. These were so good we didn't have to mix them with anything. We just ate a bowl of beans. Black beans, I'm going to show you something, tell you about something to make out of them, and then in the next couple of days I'm going to be making recipes from them so you can see them. These little red beans can be used in anything, and I'll talk to you about them. This one, which was the Jordan almond ones, the big butter beans, I cooked them in the fat that came off of the pork chop. Then I took the pork chop and put it into tiny little strips. So it was almost like, you know, just little thin strips of pork. And I sauteed those and then turned them over on the other side. I mean, cooked them on one side, turned them over on the other side, and poured beans in on top of them. And then melted cheese over the top and put my lid on. I wish I could have served it to all of you. It melted in our mouth. It was so incredible. So today, I think there's so many different ways you can use these butter beans, but I did them on top of a meat. So today I'm going to take some of our homemade sausage and cook up a little bit of that and mix that in with it. It's good enough just to eat the way it is. It's cold right now, so you're seeing a little bit of the fat in there. Don't be afraid of the fat if you're using your good pork fat or your good chicken fat that you have made yourself, that you know where it came from. And if you are a vegetarian and you're not using any fat, it's still wonderful. So mix it with your cheeses and different things like that if you want to. For the anasazi beans, which are, you can use pinto beans, anasazi beans like that. There's a thing called chalupa, which is beans and cheese and maybe, it used to be, we used to use tortilla chips in it. We don't do those anymore unless we make them ourselves. So this is organic yellow masa harina, and it is a corn flour that is to make a masa dough out of, to make the corn tortillas with. This is for making tamales. I tried making corn tortillas out of it. It didn't work as well as something else. And I'm still working on the something else. But this is to make into a dough, roll out, cut it into strips, and fill it full of vegetables and beans and all different kinds of things. So this is a fun idea. We'll have to try this. Black beans. I have 2 recipes that I'm going to be sharing about making black beans. One is black bean burger. My son made it. It was amazing. I've shared this recipe with our 12 Weeks to Heartiness, so you are getting a glimpse of some of the recipes in 12 Weeks to Heartiness. But I can tell you that when this black bean burger was made, I did not know it wasn't a hamburger. We are also going to use quinoa, which is another thing we put away in our freezer So we're going to use quinoa and this. It calls for a second type of bean, a white kidney bean, but I could use this butter bean, I could use this, I can use whatever I want in that. The other one is a salad, which is made with corn, and of course corn is really hard to find that is not a non-GMO, so that's why we are going to finally be growing our own corn this year. We're growing these really long, thin corns that are for making our own cornmeal, and then we're growing our own corn so that we can have sweet corn to eat and use in recipes. As much as we love it on the cob, we're going to try not to just gorge on starchy corn. We'll have it once in a while, but to use it, this recipe that calls for some corn to go with the beans, and so that's just a delightful thing to put with it, item. These beans right here can be used, they could be mashed and made into refried beans. They'd be wonderful that way. Used in tacos, in burritos, in anything that you want to. And if you have children and you want to be able to have things on hand, then mash them up, put them into a container for them in the freezer, and so they can just pull them out. You don't have to mash them. You can just use a potato masher and slightly mash them, and then they're really good that way. You can also, the best beans that are made refried beans are used with a good lard that you have gotten from a pastured pig. So don't forget that. And then these butter beans, they're just a delight to have in your mouth and to use them in any way that you want to. Like I said, I'm going to cook some sausage and put them over the top of them for our lunch today. I hope you learned something from the beans. Don't be afraid to have them. They are a wealth. These will be put into smaller containers and stuck in the freezer. And in fact, I will be putting them in food savers just because that's what I have right now. So go out and explore your beans. I did these all in one day, these two in the crock pot. I just kept them on low and they just cooked while I did my day, and at the end of the day I took them out. So they're easy, they're super good protein, they're an excellent fiber, they are an excellent carbohydrate. If you are a diabetic, you must watch your intake of them and be careful that you are eating enough protein and not just overdoing on the beans. Later in the week, I'll be showing recipes to make with some of these, and you'll see how delightful it is to eat beans. We are so grateful for you to follow us. If you are new to our channel, please like and subscribe. And if you would like to get our newsletter, which comes out every Friday, you just go to heartinessapproach.com and sign up there. If you would like to participate in our 12 Weeks to Heartiness course, there's a link just at the end of this video on the screen. Thank you so much for being here today.